So you want to talk about Terrence Howard, huh? An actor diving into physics. I gotta admit, I was pretty surprised when you set this in. But hey, you said you wanted a unique perspective on the universe, and well, you definitely found one.
Yeah, and he's not messing around either. We're talking books, patents, even complex simulations. This isn't just some Hollywood hobby. He's clearly passionate about this stuff.
Right, it's serious business. So where do we even start? Howard seems to think that our whole understanding of physics is, well, kind of off.
Off might be putting it mildly. His big thing is that it's all built on this shaky foundation, starting with straight lines.
Straight lines. Like, what's wrong with straight lines?
Well, Howard calls them a false concept, a simplification that just ignores how curved the universe really is. Imagine like trying to navigate around the world, but you're only allowed to travel in straight lines. You'd end up completely lost.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. You gotta follow the curves. So is that what Howard's saying, that we need to ditch straight lines and think in curves instead?
Exactly. He's all about curves, vibrations, and this like deep interconnectedness that he thinks traditional physics just misses completely.
Okay, so instead of straight lines, it's all like wibbly-wobbly interconnected stuff. Sounds kind of trippy, to be honest.
It definitely has a woo-woo vibe, but here's the thing. Howard's not just pulling this out of thin air. He's drawing a lot of inspiration from this guy named Walter Russell.
Melter Russell? Who's that?
Oh man, he was this fascinating guy, kind of a Renaissance man back in the 20th century. He had some pretty out there ideas about, well, pretty much everything. Art, science, spirituality, you name it.
A true Renaissance man. So what kind of ideas are we talking about here? How did he influence Howard?
Probably the biggest thing is Russell's spiral-based periodic table. He organized it all based on these things he called octaves.
Octaves, like in music.
Exactly. He believed that the universe was structured like music, all based on harmony and vibration. And this resonated really strongly with Howard, who says he's had similar thoughts about how elements are all connected since he was a kid.
So instead of elements being like individual building blocks, they're more like, what, different notes on a cosmic scale?
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like water. You've got ice, liquid water, and steam. They're all different states of the same thing, just like how Howard sees the elements.
Interesting. So like how water changes with temperature, elements change based on something else.
Exactly. Howard believes it all comes down to pressure and motion. Change those, and you change the element. It's a pretty radical departure from how we normally think about the periodic table.
It definitely is. And I'm guessing this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Howard's theories.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started. We got planetary formation, gravity, even the nature of reality itself. He's got some wild ideas about all of it.
This is going to be interesting. So where do we go from here? What's next on our deep dive into Terrence Howard's universe?
Well, let's just say things are about to get even wilder. Remember that whole discharge analogy?
Oh yeah, now we're talking about suns giving birth to planets. That sounds less like astrophysics and more like some kind of like cosmic myth.
It's a pretty wild ride, that's for sure. But hey, you wanted a unique perspective, and you've definitely got one.
So we left off of this idea of discharge. Suns giving birth to planets. How exactly does that work?
Well, picture this. You've got this star, right? And it's spinning, just like everything else in Howard's universe.
Right, lots of spinning. So what happens? Does it just like fling planets out into space?
It's kind of like that, but not exactly. Howard says that planets are formed along the star's equatorial plane. That's where all the action happens. He calls it the point of discharge.
Discharge. Wait, isn't that
Yeah, he actually compares it to,
uh
well, to human reproduction.
wow, okay, that's a new one. I don't think I've ever heard planetary formation compared to,
It's definitely a unique analogy. But remember, Howard's all about seeing connections everywhere. He's not saying they're literally the same process, of course.
Right, of course. But he sees a parallel there in terms of energy and matter flowing outward.
Exactly. It's all about patterns and how they repeat at different scales. The human body, the solar system, maybe even the entire universe.
Okay, I'm starting to see how his mind works. So we've got suns giving birth to planets. But what about gravity? Where does that fit into all of this?
Ah, gravity. Well, Howard's got some, shall we say, unconventional ideas about that too.
Unconventional how? I mean, gravity's gravity, right? It's what keeps us from floating off into space.
See, that's what we've always been taught. But Howard sees it differently. He thinks gravity is more like a side effect, a consequence of a much more fundamental force.
Okay, I'm intrigued. A side effect of what?
Electromagnetism.
Hmm.
Howard believes that the real driving force behind, well, pretty much everything in the universe, is the interaction of electromagnetic fields.
So instead of planets being pulled toward stars by gravity,
They're actually being guided by these invisible electromagnetic
or
forces.
like they're dancing.
Exactly. It's like a cosmic ballet with electromagnetism calling the shots. And the best part is, Howard claims to have actually simulated this.
Simulated it.
Remember those particle simulations we talked about earlier? He's used them to recreate some pretty complex astronomical stuff, like the formation of Saturn's rings.
Saturn's rings, those are pretty complicated. I mean, I can barely get my head around how they stay up there in the first place.
Exactly. And Howard says he's been able to replicate those formations and even Saturn's crazy hexagonal storm, all using his electromagnetic model.
Okay, that's impressive. So he's not just throwing out theories, he's actually testing them.
Exactly. He's putting his money where his mouth is, building models and running simulations.
That's pretty bold. So if he's right, and electromagnetism is the real driving force, what does that mean for our understanding of, well, everything?
It's a paradigm shift for sure. And it gets even wilder when you start thinking about how this might connect to consciousness, to our place in the universe.
Okay, now we're getting into some really big questions here. This is where things get really interesting. So we've talked about suns giving birth to planets and electromagnetism as the cosmic conductor. But where does humanity fit into all of this? This grand cosmic ballet.
Well, Howard doesn't think we're alone, not for a second. He believes that if there are other advanced civilizations out there, and he seems pretty convinced that they've already figured out these principles we've been talking about.
Okay, that makes sense. But if the universe is full of intelligent life, why haven't we heard from them? You know, the whole Fermi paradox thing.
Right, it's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Howard's take on it is, well, pretty out there. He suggests that maybe these advanced civilizations are operating on such a different level of understanding that we can't even comprehend it.
So it's like we're still using dial-up and they've moved on to some kind of like interstellar Wi-Fi.
Exactly. We're stuck in the stone age of physics while they're out there building spaceships powered by like pure consciousness or something. And it's not just about aliens either. Howard sees these same principles reflected in our own evolution.
What do you mean?
Well, think about how quickly the human brain has developed, especially our capacity for things like abstract thought and creativity.
Right. Humans are pretty good at coming up with new ideas. So is he suggesting that maybe we had a little help along the way, like a cosmic nudge in the right direction?
He's not shy about it. He even brings up ancient astronaut theories and stuff like that. You know, those ancient Sumerian tales about the Anunnaki, these advanced beings who came down to Earth.
I've heard of them. So is he saying that they like jump-started human evolution or something?
He's not necessarily saying it's a fact, but he's definitely suggesting it's a possibility. What if, he asks, our understanding of history is incomplete? What if there were external forces, these beings with a deeper understanding of the universe who helped to shape us into the species we are today? It's a lot to consider.
It really is. So where does this all leave us? If Howard's right, are we on the verge of some kind of major breakthrough?
Howard seems to think so. He's convinced that once we break free from our limited way of thinking, once we embrace this idea of a truly interconnected cosmos, we can unlock amazing new possibilities. We could revolutionize our technology, solve our biggest problems, maybe even finally make contact with those advanced civilizations out there.
It's a pretty optimistic vision of the future. Whether or not you agree with all of his theories, there's something undeniably exciting about what he's saying, you know? It reminds us that the universe is full of mysteries, that there's always more to learn, and that sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones that push us forward.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all get behind no matter what we believe about the universe and our place in it.
Well said. And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive into the mind-bending world of Terrence Howard's physics. We explored his unconventional theories on everything from straight lines to alien civilizations. We hope you enjoyed this wild ride through the cosmos. Now, we want to hear from you. What resonated with you? What challenged your assumptions? Keep the conversation going in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring the universe and all its mysteries.